Hey everybody, this is Garrett with Earth and Time, and today I'm coming to you from Mission San Juan Capistrano, where I'm going to learn about the role missions played in the foundation of California as we know it today, as Europeans started settling this area, and learn a little bit more also about some geology here. There was a major earthquake in 1812 that actually destroyed one of the churches here that we're going to go take a look at. So with that being said, come join me and let's learn a little bit more about Mission San Juan Capistrano. One thing I'll say is the sheer size of this place is amazing, and it is so beautiful. You can see all the flowers are in bloom right now. So I'm visiting here in June of 2023. So this is a different El Camino Real than the one we've talked about before in Texas. So this is the California El Camino Real. And it ran through here from 1697 through 1823, I guess. That's pretty amazing. Something new I didn't know. So the Spanish brought olives into this area, and this is an olive mill where they would press the olives and make olive oil, which I think all of us are pretty familiar with. So this is one of the old olive mills that were used here to create olive oil at the mission. One of the things I like is they talk about what life was like during the mission periods here. And so we can see this would have been a kitchen area, and we can actually see the burn marks on the ceiling and the chimney going out. So this is where food would have been cooked. Now, a lot of things grow here in Southern California. It's a very fertile place. So you'll see they had lemons and oranges and apples and cabbage and potatoes. And of course, they also had ranching, so they'd have meat. And there's plentiful fishing in the area. So we're pretty close to the coastline. And so this is what they were growing here. So you'll see staple crops were corn, beans, barley, wheat, and peas. Produce they grow are tomatoes, chili peppers, lettuce, apricots, and pears. Wow. And then special crops, they make grapes for their own wine, watermelon, olives, and tobacco. And so you can see how a mission might have looked, where they'd have the different areas. All these places were self-sufficient. So you had to have places that made candles and places to do laundry, and you'd have storerooms and stables, and were areas for cattle. So everywhere had to be self-sufficient. Pretty cool to learn about. So the ceiling up here, you'll see there's metal bars behind, but in front of those metal bars are actually the original roof from the late 1780s that was in here. And you can see how they made it with reeds and plaster and wood from the area, and now they've reinforced it with the metal bars behind. Really neat to see the construction from this time period. And one of the things that's fascinating is the role citrus played here. So check out my episode on citrus, so where we learn about the history of where citrus came from, how it became important for the foundation of the modern California that we see today. And you can see here within the mission grounds that they had citrus, and this was also a central type of fruit for the individuals that lived here. Here's a little bit about adobe. So these buildings were generally made out of adobe, which was a very classic way to make things in the southwestern United States as a whole, including here. And it was a way to make clay into bricks. And here's some of the old adobe walls starting to, fortunately, start falling apart. And you can see where they would use the wooden frames there to help make the brick shapes. Eventually, this mission would go from being Spanish controlled to being controlled by Mexico after their independence. in 1821. And so from 1821 to 1845, from what I understand, a lot of the Mission San Juan Capistrano area really ended up degrading. However, eventually in 1845, the place became a home to the Forster family. And the Forster family made this their home for about 20 years, where they made this into basically ranchero or ranch land. And eventually, the property be restored back to the Catholic Church in 1865 by none other than Abraham Lincoln, only a few weeks before his death. Pretty interesting history, and one I had no idea about. I did not know Abraham Lincoln actually helped restore this church, or this property, back to the Catholic Church. And what we can see here is a map of the ajachemen origins. Here's Mission San Juan Capistrano, and you can see some of the other indigenous tribes that were in the area. So San Juan Capistrano is right here, right in the middle of the ajachemen territory. All right, because I'm also a geologist, I've got to take a look at the rocks that make up the walls here. So this is the basilica that collapsed in the 1812 earthquake. And what we can see are some of the sandstones in here that probably come from the Capistrano Formation or the Monterey Formation in this area. And we can also see some metamorphic rocks. I'm not sure where these come from. I'm not familiar with the geology out here, but we can see how they use these rocks to build the foundational walls, and then they put this other facade on the outside and created basically what looks like a breccia. They took some piece of breccia and made the walls. Now, these were all painted at one time, and apparently the new basilica we'll go take a look at has similar painting or feel to it, according to the docents here, that this would have had at one time. So we can go take a look at that as well. Here's what this basilica would look like, or what was known as the Great Stone Church would have looked like. So it was built between 1797 to 1806 when it was under construction. Then they used it from 1806 to 1812, just 6 years. And then on December 8th, 1812, it was destroyed by an earthquake. And apparently there were victims here. It says, "May the earthquake victims rest in peace." So you get an idea what it would have looked like. And this is what it looks like today after that December 8th, 1812 earthquake. So now I'm standing inside of the old church. It would have been a great cathedral, and you can see the size of this thing. And let me turn myself around for scale so you can actually see what I'm looking at here. This is a giant church, but it collapsed in an earthquake in 1812. So we're along a series of fault lines here. So we're close to the San Andreas Fault, which many people have heard of, and this is a very seismically active area. So in 1812, there was a major earthquake that rocked this cathedral and the land here, and the cathedral was destroyed. So what we see today is the relic of that original cathedral, but you can imagine how beautiful that must have been and how large it must have been. Here is a view of the modern day church, which would have been similar in size and make, I guess, from the one that was destroyed in 1812. And so let's go take a look inside to get an idea what that one would have looked like pre the December 8th, 1812 earthquake. The size of this thing is unreal. It is a massive church. Here I am at the front doors to give you an idea of just how big this church was. And if you can imagine back in 1812, how big that church must have been, especially considering churches like this, especially in the Western U.S., weren't as common, especially of this size. Let's go take a look inside. So as we walk in here, you can remember how big the back was for that one arch in the 1812 Great Stone Church. Wow, this is beautiful. Absolutely gorgeous. But you can get an idea how big that church was. Thank you all for joining me today to check out Mission San Juan Capistrano. I hope you enjoyed this episode. Really enjoyed visiting the grounds, learning the history of this place, learning that this is the foundation of what was Orange County, a place that actually I had family that grew up in. So with that being said, if you enjoyed this episode, please give it a thumbs up. If you haven't already, please subscribe to this channel and hit that bell for notification. Thank you all so much for joining me today, and take care. Dedicating this episode to Robin, one of our super fans. Thank you so much for supporting us and watching all the time, and to Usagi Wasabi, who is a Houston artist who gave me the idea about going to Mission San Juan Capistrano. Usagi Wasabi's contact information will be down in the description below. Please check out her artwork. Thank you.